If I had to guess, in your day-to-day Pokemon adventures in, say, the new games or even the old games, I think a Pokemon line that all of us think about very rarely is the Aipom-line. That said, it's actually quite good for solo challenges. Let me prove that to you today. These are the rules for the solo challenge. They're in the description if you need to reference them later. For base stats, Aipom has 55 HP, defense, and special defense, 70 attack, 40 special attack, and 85 speed. It's got a fast growth rate, which is pretty good, although not the best growth rate in the early game. It is slower to level up than both the medium slow and the fluctuating growth rate until level 30. Since this is my first playthrough series in Pokemon HeartGold, I'm always running Hardy Natures and I'm banning Hidden Power. For an ability, I had a choice between two, Runaway or Pickup. And in this case, I went with Runaway, which seems like the far worse choice because Pickup would give me access to a bunch of other items. I ban it when my HM users are using it because that feels kind of unfair for a solo challenge, but when it's my solo Pokemon, I'm totally happy to use it. That said, Runaway is the superior choice for the Aipom line. I'm going to explain why later. Today, the rival's going to be picking the Chikorita line, which is by far the most difficult team to face whenever you have a neutral type interaction with his Pokemon. Aipom's starting moves are Scratch, Tail Whip, and Sand Attack. Honestly, it's a pretty good set for the early game. Scratch and Tail Whip pair very well together. Of course, Scratch gets the same type attack bonus and it can't miss. Sand Attack is also nice to have. It does affect bird Pokemon, which means it could be useful against Falkner, although I'm pretty sure I'm just going to be able to muscle my way through that fight. As I'm making my way through the early game, I fight every wild Pokemon that shows up just to get as many levels as I can in the early game. Aipom learns Astonish at level 8, and at level 11 I say no to Baton Pass. Of course, this is not useful in a solo challenge. Sprout Tower is mandatory in Pokemon HeartGold, so I have to clear out most of the trainers here, but I decide to fight everyone just for the extra experience. By the time I'm finishing Elderly, Aipom is almost level 14, and there are still 2 trainers inside of the gym. I could have skipped them, but I decided against it. Again, more experience in the early game can only help me in my pursuits throughout this entire run. So Aipom is level 14 by the time I'm ready to face Falkner. His first Pokemon is Pidgey. Scratch does way more than half, almost one-shotting. I think I would have if I was level 15. That's a little bit unfortunate for me because then it chooses to go for Sand Attack, lowering my accuracy. But despite this, I get very lucky on the next turn, hitting and also getting a critical hit, taking the Pidgeotto down to low health. It doesn't have a Citrus Berry because it's in the early game, so because of that, with my next attack with Scratch, which also doesn't miss, I knock out his ace and take an easy victory over Falkner. Also here, I level up to 15, and now Aipom has a chance to learn the move Tickle. I genuinely had no idea what this move did. I thought it was introduced to the series in Generation 4, but that isn't true. It was introduced in Generation 3. Still, very few Pokemon learn it. In Generation 3, Tangela, Omanyte, Omastar, Aipom, and Whiscash can learn the move. By the way, I just can't resist saying that I love the mental image of Omanyte or Omastar tickling the enemy with their little tentacles. Anyway, I should stay on track. In this case, what does Tickle do? It lowers the attack and defense of the opposing Pokemon by 1 stage. So it is superior to Tail Whip at very least. Modifying the opponent's stats negatively is typically not a good idea in solo challenges. Usually it's better to set up yourself. That said, the Ambipom-line does not get access to Swords Dance, one of the best setup moves in HeartGold. So modifying the enemy's stats might be my best option, especially in the early game against trainers like Bugsy and Whitney. Outside of Union Cave, I grab myself the Shell Bell. This will be the best held item during this section of the game. I then backtrack to the Ruins of Alph to pick up 2 berries. I've been noticing that having these for Bugsy and Azalea Town is typically a good idea. I also grab the rare candy here, just in case I need more early game levels. During the Rocket plotline, let's go through the rest of Aipom's level up moveset. At level 18, it learns Fury Swipes, which doesn't make any sense. This move's just kind of bad. Beyond that, at level 22, it gets Swift, which is a special move with only 60 base power. It's nice to bypass accuracy checks, but as a physical attacker, this move is probably not going to be useful, right? After that, it gets Screech, Agility, Double Hit at level 32, which is required to evolve Aipom into Ambipom. Fling probably won't be useful, but Nasty Plot at level 39 could be. This doesn't pair well with all of the other level up moves, but it could be synergistic with Swift. or with the TM and HM coverage that Aipom gets. The final level up move is Last Resort, but this is not going to be helpful today. So let's go through the TM and HM moves. Focus Punch, Water Pulse, Solar Beam, Iron Tail, Thunderbolt, Thunder, Return for same type attack bonus damage, Dig, Shadow Ball, Brick Break, but remember that's available with BP in the Battle Frontier, so I can't use it today. Shockwave, Aerial Ace, Thief, Shadow Claw, Thunder Wave, Grass Knot, U-Turn, and Substitute. Of these, the move that stands out most to me is Thunderbolt, because I will be able to purchase that in the game corner just around the corner once I beat Bugsy. For now, I'm going to have to rely on my current set and the Shell Bell to get me through this battle. He leads with Scyther, and right away I score a critical hit with Scratch, doing more than half. But his ace and lead has a Citrus Berry, so it's able to heal a lot, and it looks like even from there I'm going to take multiple turns to knock it out. It goes for Leer followed by U-Turn, doing a lot of damage to Aipom before it switches out. Then I get another critical hit on the Metapod. This doesn't allow me to one-shot though. It sets up, then he uses a Super Potion, and Scratch has to 3-hit from there. Metapod deals a tiny amount of chip damage before his next Pokemon comes in, which is again Scyther. Scratch brings it down to red health. It goes for U-Turn again, switching out, leaving Aipom with only 2 hit points. I thought I could maybe do this because I am faster than the Scyther by 2 speed, but the Kakuna has Poison Sting, and it inflicts the status condition, and that's what knocks out Aipom. Okay, so this isn't looking great. I tried the fight again, but things are almost identical. I make it back to the Kakuna with 2 hit points. That is the identical scenario to last time. Although, this time around I'm holding the Oran Berry so I can heal a little bit more. I was hoping this wouldn't allow poison to knock me out, but the status condition never gets inflicted. The problem is, while Aipom is faster than the Scyther, it has a priority move, Quick Attack, so it could just use that to finish me. I think the solution here might be that I need to level up more. I don't want to do that. Grinding on wild Johto Pokemon or on the trainers in the early game is not very efficient. I had one more strategy that I wanted to try out against the Scyther. Maybe while it's setting up with moves like Focus Energy and Leer, I can also set up with Tickle, lowering its defense and its attack. I just hope that I get to attack once into its softened up defenses before it switches out using U-Turn. I thought the likelihood of this happening was fairly high since it's usually going to set up for 2 turns, but then Bugsy just kind of drops the ball. He sets up so many times, using Leer 3 times against Aipom and a bunch of super potions, and then I just 2-shot the Scyther, and from there I can easily finish off both the Metapod and the Kakuna. Rival 2. For this fight I have Astonish to knock out the Ghastly, it's able to 1-hit. Then Zubat comes out, but I easily 2-shot using Scratch. That leaves only Bayleaf. Now it sometimes likes to set up with Reflect on turn 1, but in this case it goes for Poison Powder instead, giving me more time to damage it with Scratch. But I'm not in a great position from here because it can constantly use Synthesis to heal its health while I'm taking poison damage. I can't use items in battle because that's one of my rules, so I essentially just have to luck through the rest of the fight, and surprisingly Reflect wears off. Scratch is doing okay damage. It's missing a bunch of Razor Leafs, and yeah, I do pull it off, just barely. Aipom survives with 1 hit point and knocks out the Bayleaf. Inside the forest, time to upgrade my normal type move to Headbutt. Then, as soon as I arrive in Goldenrod City, I'm going to play Voltorb Flip, accumulate a bunch of coins, and purchase myself so many useful items. Of course, I'm going to be grabbing Rest and Substitute, but I also want to pick up Thunderbolt, which I immediately teach in the place of Sand Attack. Additionally, I did purchase myself the Silk Scarf, but for whatever reason, I keep forgetting to equip this item before I face Whitney. Still though, I think my set right now is pretty good. I put Substitute in the place of Tickle, and then when leveling up inside the gym, I reach level 22, and I do teach Swift. Just in case there's any accuracy shenanigans, the Clefairy could Metronome something like Double Team, plus this move could be useful in combination with Nasty Plot, like I mentioned earlier. Anyways, now let's face Whitney. The Clefairy isn't great offensively unless it's rolling really good moves with Metronome, so I feel very comfortable setting up Substitute here. Then I can use Headbutt and knock out her lead over 2 turns. Also, I get a flinch, and I am still going to be able to do this against the Miltank because Aipom is very fast. So with the speed advantage, let's see how many flinches I'm going to get. Well, I don't get one on turn 1. It goes for Stomp, breaking my Substitute, and then it stomps again on the next turn. But from here, I start to flinch. She uses healing items, I continue flinching, and while the Miltank can use Milk Drink, Aipom can also get critical hits occasionally, doing a lot of damage, inflicting a flinch, finishing off Whitney's ace. This was a much easier battle when compared with Bugsy. The prize for winning here is the Attract TM. I'm going to be holding on to this because it's so useful against red at the end of the game. I stopped by the department store, pick up the TM for return. While I was here, I should have gone to the daily raffle desk and picked up the TM for Shadow Claw. I will end up backtracking here later just so I have a better move against Morty. Inside the national park, I pick up the TM for Dig. I could teach this now, but it's not very good against Morty after generation 3 because his Pokemon have Levitate. Aipom makes quick work of Sudowoodo with Thunderbolt, and it has no problems against the two beauties just south of Ecruteak City. Now instead of fighting Morty right away, I wanted to go to the lighthouse to do more leveling. After all, the fast growth rate is starting to pick up pace now, and I'm getting close to evolving into Ambipom, which is going to happen at level 32. While I was doing this training, I have the chance to learn Agility. It always is such a frustration of mine that the developers gave fast Pokemon this move. Like, I know it makes sense thematically, but it makes absolutely no strategic sense. Maybe they're trying to give you a way to play around paralysis. I don't know. What do you think the reason is that fast Pokemon get Agility? I really do think it's purely for flavor. Defeating the trainers in the lighthouse brings Ambipom up to level 30, and then I backtrack to Ecruteak City to face the rival in Burned Tower. Ghastly's first, and my best move against it is Thunderbolt, but this is a big upgrade over Astonish, which I had to use last time. Plus, I'm just going to set up Substitute on turn 1 to block all of its status shenanigans. From there, I knock it out over 2 turns with the Electric type move. This levels Aipom up to level 31, 1 level away from evolution, and then the rival sends in Bayleaf. Headbutt right away does more than half, Bayleaf just fizzles with a poison powder and then goes down for free. So this battle was essentially free actually. Substitute is really good during this fight. I one-shot the Zubat and two-shot the Magnemite. This is where I take my time backtracking to Goldenrod City to pick up Shadow Claw, which I had previously forgotten. I can get back to Ecruteak City very quickly by just going onto a route and then using the field move Teleport, which no longer works inside cities in Generation 4. Okay, I wasn't sure which move to teach Shadow Claw over because Headbutt's really good, Swift could be useful later on, Thunderbolt obviously I want to keep around for a long time, and Substitute is great against all the ghosts inside the gym. That said, I'm about to learn Double Hit and I do need that move to evolve, so I think right now I'm going to give up Headbutt since it isn't useful against ghosts at all. Shadow Claw lets me steamroll my way through all of the trainers inside the gym, and at level 32 when fighting the first trainer, I level up and I can learn Double Hit. I have to put it in the place of Swift because I want to keep Substitute for Morty. Knowing this move and leveling up allows Aipom to evolve into its final form, Ambipom. This Pokemon, the design is a little bit freaky. I wish they had just taken away its nose. Then its face would look much less skull-like, and I think it would be cute like Aipom rather than its current freaky form. This is not one of my favorite designs, but I know there's someone out there that loves Ambipom, so let me know if this is one of your favorites in the comments. The evolution brings a big upgrade to my base stats. 75 HP, 100 attack, 60 special attack, 66 defense and special defense, and 115 speed. We are not going to be moving second for the remainder of the run. Now there's also another big upgrade that comes with this evolution, but I'm going to wait to talk about it until after we finish Morty, because it's not going to be relevant for this battle. I'm faster than all of his ghosts, and I have Shadow Claw, which is physical, and it's going to do massive damage because his Pokemon have low physical defenses. I one-shot the Ghastly, the Haunter, the Gengar comes out next, and even it can't survive a single hit. So this battle is a clean sweep. Now, let's talk about Double Hit. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen in the move pool, you'll see that its base power is 35. But if you look in Ambipom's moveset, you'll see that its effective power is 94. This move, like Double Kick, hits 2 times. But I'm not factoring in the multiple hits in the current effective power. To arrive at 94, the math is very simple. We need to multiply Double Hit by the same type attack bonus, which is a factor of 1.5. That gives us an effective power of 52.5. Then, if we multiply that by the Silk Scarf's bonus, which is a factor of 1.2, we get an effective power of 63, but this is not 94, so where is the other bonus coming from? And the answer to that is Ambipom's new ability, Technician, which increases the power of moves that have a base power of 60 or less by 50%. So in this case, Double Hit's base power is 35, which means it will be increased by this 50%. So if we multiply 63 by 1.5, then we get an effective power of 94.5. My overlay is always rounding these effective powers down just for visual visual aesthetics. I tried putting the decimal points on the overlay for effective powers, and it looked so bad, I just couldn't stand it. I want to make an interesting comparison here. Double hit right now has an effective power of 94 per hit, so if we multiply that by 2, the actual effective power of double hit on a single turn is 189. If we compare this to a maximum damage return, which has a base power of 102, after the same type attack bonus and the silk scarf, return's base power would be 183.6. So double hit is better than return when used by a technician Ambipom. This is the reason I went with runaway as my ability at the beginning of the game, because the other ability that Ambipom can have is pickup, and Pokemon will never change abilities when they evolve, provided their evolution still has that ability. Essentially, a Pokemon is assigned an ability based on a bit flag. If the bit flag is set, then it will get ability number 1. In this case, that's runaway for Aipom and technician for Ambipom, and ability number 2 is pickup for both Aipom and Ambipom. Okay, so I decided to go to Chuck next, because I am not scared of the fighting types. Double hit is so good. It crushes all of them. So now let's take on the gym leader. Primeape is first, of course. I'm going to go for double hit right away, and it does massive damage, easily one-turning the first Pokemon. Poliwrath is next. I go for double hit once again. This does not do enough damage to knock it out, but then it just whiffs a Hypnosis, and I knock out Chuck's Ace on the next turn. For the red Gyarados, I can just use Thunderbolt to easily one-shot. Next, inside the Rocket plotline, Ambipom reaches level 39, where it can learn Nasty Plot. Now, I do want to run this move. It's so good in combination with Thunderbolt, but it doesn't have great synergy with the other moves on my set: Shadow Claw, Substitute, and Double Hit. I just spent an extended amount of time making a case for why Double Hit is such a fantastic move, so of course I don't want to get rid of it. Instead, I made the decision to get rid of Shadow Claw because it's essentially served its purpose. I don't have to face many ghosts from here on out. This does leave me with a very strange moveset: Double Hit, Substitute, Thunderbolt, and Nasty Plot. But don't worry, of course it's going to be more than enough to take on the next gym leader, who is usually incompetent. Let's face Price. Seal is first. I could set up Nasty Plot and then use Thunderbolt against it and the Dugong, but I thought this would just waste more time than it was worth. I go for double hit and easily knock out the Seal in one turn. Next, he sends in his ace, Piloswine, but double hit is powerful enough to knock it out in one turn, provided one of the hits gets a crit. And it does. Last is Dugong, and double hit is once again able to pull off the one-turn knockout. My current moveset is just not going to be good against Jasmine. I could potentially set up Nasty Plot and then use Thunderbolt for the Magnemites, even though it's resisted, but that doesn't make a lot of sense because then I have nothing against the Steelix. There is no way I'm knocking that thing out using double hit. So I'm going to need to switch up my moves. Substitute is definitely the current weakest link, so I'm going to teach Dig in its place. Churro, I'm trying to deliver this line about how we're about to face Jasmine, but you just are you're making it really hard, buddy. Yeah, I know. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Churro. Oh my gosh, he's so loud. Now, Churro, buddy. Now, oh my gosh. With this ground type move, come on, buddy. I just need one sentence. With the ground type move, I know I'll easily be able to manage the Magnemites, but the real question is, how difficult will her Steelix be? Okay, so Steelix sets up Sandstorm on the first turn it's in battle. Then I go for Dig, which does roughly 1/3, but it looks like it's going to put her into healing range because it does bring the Steelix down to red health with the next hit. However, it has a Citrus Berry allowing it to heal, and this takes it out of KO range from my next Dig, so it survives. Then she uses a Hyper Potion, and this crushes my hopes of winning. Steelix goes for Iron Tail, and Ambipom faints. I tried going for double hit on turn 1, and then using Dig as a follow-up to avoid the Steelix healing, but this doesn't work. Double hit actually does okay damage, and after 2 turns of it, I'm still in the same scenario that I had last time. I think with only 1 turn, I wouldn't be doing enough damage to the Steelix and it would still just survive. So I'm gonna need to level up more. I fight some trainers at C just to level up to 43, and then I use rare candies to go all the the way up to level 48. This is over 3 more damage rounding thresholds, and I think it should give me the 3-shot on the Steelix. Dig is now doing about half, so Jasmine's ace consumes its citrus berry. Then my follow-up dig brings it to lower health, and she's not going to heal, so I'm able to knock it out on the next turn and take an easy victory over Jasmine. This fight swung hard, from brutal at level 42 to easy at level 48. Okay, so Ambipom is doing quite well in this solo playthrough so far. Petrol is the next major threat in these solo challenges, but I can one-hit all of his Pokemon, even the Weezing, when using double hit. I end up getting poisoned during the battle because double hit doesn't have perfect accuracy. Although this status condition isn't great in Generation 4 because in the overworld it wears off when your Pokemon reaches 1 health instead of causing them to faint. For this reason, after Petrol, I am not healing in the overworld, and this ends up being a mistake. I wanted to save my healing items and just go back to the Pokemon Center, however, then I accidentally run into a trainer, and unlike Generation 1 and 2, even if you're knocking out the opposing Pokemon, you're still taking poison damage. So this ends up causing me to have a loss. I did not want to reset before Petrol, so instead I just black out. This heals me up and I go back to the Pokemon Center, and then I can continue my way through the plot line. The rival in the underground is next. I have another near loss here because of poison damage. The Meganium poisoned me with poison powder. It still has this move this far into the playthrough. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. Also, the Meganium by this point is just not very good. The remainder of his team is also not great. I don't have excellent damage against the Haunter, but Thunderbolt is enough to manage it. The rest of the Rocket plotline is completely trivial, nothing to say there. Now, as I head through Ice Path, let's talk about what's coming up next for Ambipom. Double hit has been a fantastic move, but I don't think for the late game it's going to be useful anymore. Dig is also not that great because it takes 2 turns, and as we can see, if I ever get poisoned, this move is really not good to have on your set, especially when you need to rely on it for certain Pokemon like Magneton. Thunderbolt and Nasty Plot have inherent synergy, and there is more synergy to be had. Once I clear Ice Path, I can head back to Violet City and go south. This allows me to pick up 1 Heart Scale. This is the only one available in all of Johto. I'm going to spend it on the Blackthorn City move tutor to get Swift back in the place of double hit. Now, Swift conveniently deals special damage and has a base power of 60, so it is getting the 50% damage boost from Technician. That takes its effective power all the way up to 162. This is not as good as a Silk Scarf boosted return, and it's also not physical, but it will let me set up with Nasty Plot and have the synergy of boosting all of my moves, including Thunderbolt and Shadow Ball, which I am going to teach in the place of Dig. When I sat down to plan this solo challenge, it seemed immediately obvious to me that at some point I wanted to go to the purely special moveset. But maybe I did this just slightly too soon. We're about to see. Claire leads with Gyarados. This is another reason that I wanted to go to the special set right away, because Intimidate is not effective against me. I can set up Nasty Plot once, maybe even twice since it's going for Dragon Rage, not doing very much damage. And then I went for Swift, which was objectively a misclick, although it still does enough damage to knock out her first Pokemon. From there, the Dragonairs are easily one-shots, and the Kingdra also goes down to a single Swift. This was a trivial gym battle. By the way, one big advantage of using Swift as your primary damaging normal type move with Ambipom is that whenever you have to do a double battle, you can hit both of the enemy Pokemon at once. This speeds up progress just a little bit. But now, progress is gonna slow down because I didn't keep double hit. It would have been so useful against the Kimono girls. They act as a sort of mini Elite Four where you can't heal between each one of them. You actually can't even use healing items because the battle sequence does not break. They battle you one after another. So if you get hit by a status condition, it applies for all of the remaining battles against them. If your health gets lowered, then it applies for all of the remaining battles against them. There are many problems here. The Umbreon can flinch me with Dark Pulse. It can also use Confuse Ray. I come out of the first battle with orange health. Then Espeon is next. I am not able to one-shot it using Shadow Ball. By the way, Swift does do slightly more damage, so that's another case for why I shouldn't have even taught Shadow Ball at all. I'm pretty sure Ambipom could just manage Karen's Gengar after using Nasty Plot and then going for Thunderbolt. Flareon's next. It could burn me, but it can also just knock me out, which is what happens here. Now, I tried these battles again and again, but I keep losing. I thought to myself, maybe I can black out and then not have to face the first 3 Kimono girls again, but this isn't how it works. If you black out, you have to fight all of the Kimono girls over again, so I'm going to have to get through them without losing. This caused one more reset, and then I just think I got lucky. I was able to knock out the Umbreon without getting hit by Confuse Ray or flinched by Dark Pulse. Then the Espeon's next. I go for Swift for a slightly more damage, and I am able to one-shot. Flareon, instead of attacking me with a high power move, just goes for Will-O-Wisp, which burns me, but I'm not scared of this status condition because I'm not using physical moves. Jolteon's next, and while I do have to 2-shot, it goes for Double Team, which is ineffective when I'm using Swift. That leaves only Vaporeon, and it doesn't do very much damage, and even with my burn, I'm still able to 2-shot and finally defeat the Kimono girls. If I came back and did Ambipom again, I would definitely keep Double Hit just for this sequence of battles. I think it would have made them trivial. I probably would have one-shot most of the Pokemon, with maybe the only exception being Umbreon or Vaporeon, the 2 bulky evolutions. Okay, rival before the league. This is overall an easy battle because he leads with Sneasel, which is a really bad Pokemon. I just set up with Nasty Plot all the way to +6, and then I simply sweep the rest of his team. Okay, time for Ambipom to face the Elite Four. Will shouldn't really be a problem, provided the first Xatu doesn't use Confuse Ray against me on turn 1, because I'm setting up with Nasty Plot. But instead, it just goes for U-turn, switching out, giving me 1 free turn to set up, and from there I'm just going to use Shadow Ball on the remainder of his team members. Thunderbolt's better against the Slowbro and the Xatu, and as I've mentioned before, Swift does do a little bit more damage when compared with Shadow Ball. That said, I can just save my PP for the remainder of the league by using Shadow Ball now. Will is extremely easy. So Koga's next, and he's not as simple. He leads with Ariados, and this has Poison Jab, unlike in Generation 2. It poisons me right away, which is concerning. I didn't heal going into this fight, so my health is not already in the greatest position, and now I won't have time to set up more than 1 Nasty Plot, meaning the Fortress is going to take multiple turns to knock out, and it does no Protect, which means it can stall me. I thought that this was going to be really bad because I was going to 2-shot, but Thunderbolt pulls off the 1-hit, which is really good. Then Swift is able to take out the following Muck. Crobat follows, Thunderbolt gets the 1-hit, Ambipom is faster of course. That leaves only Venomoth. Ambipom takes poison damage down to 2 hit points, moves first against Koga's last Pokemon, and pulls through with a second victory. Bruno is much easier than Koga just was. His first Pokemon, Hitmontop, loves to go for Dig on turn 1. Because I'm faster, I can just set up Nasty Plot twice, going to +4, and from there, I just sweep the remainder of his team. Even the Machamp is a 1-hit, so he doesn't have a chance to use his super effective damage against me. Karen is even easier, especially since I'm running Swift as my primary damage dealing move. The Umbreon is just locked into setting up Double Team at the beginning of the fight. I set up Nasty Plot all the way to +6, and then I completely destroy the remaining team members she has. So does Lance have the chance of stopping Ambipom's absolute terror through the Pokemon League? Well, I don't really think so. First is Gyarados. It has Intimidate, but I don't care. I can set up Nasty Plot here. It's not doing very much damage with Waterfall, so I go all the way to +6. Then I have Thunderbolt, which can easily one-shot Lance's lead. Now the only question in my mind is, will Swift do enough damage to all of his remaining Pokemon? They're decently bulky, and Swift is not that powerful of a move. Again though, Technician is just a fantastic ability. I'm able to one-shot the Dragonite. He sent in his Ace Dragonite first, which is level 50. The other 2 are only level 49, so they also go down in single hits, and that leaves both Charizard and Aerodactyl. Here, I could have gone for Thunderbolt, but Swift is still able to knock out the Charizard. I do switch to using Thunderbolt for the Aerodactyl, and in the end, Lance is another easy sweep. Ambipom was so fantastic for this section of the game. Nicely done, freaky little guy. Okay, are you ready for an incredibly blunder-filled Kanto? Well, I make 2 major mistakes. The first one is not against Erica, her team is very easy. The first mistake comes against Sabrina. I only set up once with Nasty Plot, but that doesn't allow me to one-shot all of her Pokemon. I tried to squeeze in another Nasty Plot against the Mr. Mime, which I don't think makes sense, since the Espeon is the Pokemon on her team that has the highest HP stat. So I take 1 loss here because I wasn't planning particularly well. In the second fight, I can just barely survive the hits hits from Espeon, set up Nasty Plot twice, and then knock out the following Mr. Mime and Alakazam. Okay, get ready. Misty, easy. Surge, easy as you'd expect. Actually, not technically easy. I do get paralyzed here, which caused some problems, but I'm still able to defeat him. Brock, easy. Blaine, easy. Janine, apparently not easy because I'm really bad. I decided to set up with Nasty Plot here because I've just kind of been lulled into this technique. Anyways, it's not a good choice. I get poisoned, and because of the poison and damage I've taken earlier into the fight, I end up losing here, which I think might be a first for HeartGold. Even in this game, her team is really bad. So the answer is just spam attacking moves, never set up. I one-shot every single Pokemon on her team, and I didn't even need to heal going into the battle. Well, that's not entirely true. The Venomoth at the very end does survive one hit just barely. I didn't notice this, but unlike in Generation 2, her team members are actually at much higher levels. So this Venomoth is level 50, just like Koga's Venomoth in Pokemon Yellow. Also, I do want to note that my Ambipom is level 74 right now. The fast growth rate is really starting to pay off. If you go back and watch through all the clips I showed you of the Kanto gym leaders, you're going to see its progress through the levels just start to take off. Unfortunately though, being at a high level is not all that I'm going to need. Blue is next, and this battle is really difficult in most cases. Executor comes in first, and this Pokemon is usually a paradox. If you set up against it, it's going to establish Trick Room, and then if you're faster, you'll be slower than all of his other Pokemon. But if you're already slower, then you'll be faster, but that's pretty rare. In this case, I did go for Nasty Plot setting up. It misses a Leaf Storm after establishing Trick Room, and I get to +4. But then Leaf Storm hits, and it does more than half to Ambipom. Since it was moving first, I'm locked into another Nasty Plot going to +6. Now, unless Leaf Storm misses, I'm going to lose. And fortunately for me, the Executor goes for Hypnosis, which misses, and then Shadow Ball hits, so I knock out his lead. But Trick Room is still around, so Machamp is able to move first, and that's really bad. It hits Dynamic Punch, gets a critical hit, and of course Ambipom goes down. I kept trying this fight, first of all just attacking the Executor, but it takes 2 hits to knock out, which is not great, so I can't avoid Trick Room. That means Machamp is always going to attack with Dynamic Punch, confusing Ambipom, and this status condition ends up being my undoing. If the Executor gets off Trick Room, then I'm not going to be able to come out on top of the Machamp, so I think I need to use Rare Candies now. I boost Ambipom all the way up to level 80, and then I try again. The Machamp knocks out Ambipom 3 more times, even at the higher level, so this is not going to work. I need an alternative strategy. Shadow Ball doesn't really offer damage over Swift, so I can replace it. In this case, I'm going to choose Attract because it's very good against Red at the end of the game, and he's sort of just around the corner. I do have to do the league rematches first. But this move could prevent the Executor from going for Trick Room. It could also stall it out long enough without it attacking with Leaf Storm, where Trick Room wears off, and then I can move first against the Machamp. Things don't line up well the first time I try this strategy, but the second time I do, it immobilizes the Executor, and then I can set up using Swift after +2 to knock out his lead in 1 turn. Machamp is next, but Trick Room isn't on the field, so Swift can one-shot. Then it takes care of the Arcanine. It also takes care of the Rhydon over 2 turns. Well, it would have been 2, but he uses 2 full restores, wasting a bunch of time. Thunderbolt knocks out the Gyarados, leaving only the Pidgeot, but of course Thunderbolt's super effective here too. So Blue is defeated, Attract was the answer. As you'll know, the league rematches in Pokemon HeartGold are actually quite difficult. I've given up Shadow Ball, which in some ways could be problematic against Will. The thing is here, I still have Thunderbolt, which is decent against the Bronzong, and then beyond that, Swift is just going to be enough, especially if I just set up Nasty Plot, and the initial Pokemon he has is very defensive, so I go all the way to +6 and then I crush his team. Koga is, like Janine, a little bit problematic. Right away, I decided to go for Nasty Plot because I'm used to the Skuntank using Dig. Instead here, it uses Toxic, and I decided to take a very quick reset because I'm going to lose since I don't have Rest. The next time around, it does go for Dig, giving me Nasty Plots up to +4, and then I sweep through the rest of his team. By the way, in Generation 1, Swift will hit Pokemon when they're in the semi-invulnerable turn of Dig and Fly, but that was changed starting in Generation 2, so I can't just go for Swift if the Skuntank goes underground. Bruno's next. He leads with Hitmontop. This thing loves to use Counter. I can play around that. I can just go for nasty plot, set up, and then knock it out in one hit. From there, another sweep. Ambipom is so good in this stage of the game. Karen starts with Weavile, which you might think would be a threat, but I don't need to set up to full. +4 is enough to manage the rest of her team. So what about Lance? This is one of the most difficult rematches, I think, in all of Pokemon. If I had to rank every battle for difficulty that I'm currently doing on my channel, I think this might be the most difficult. I actually think Red at the very end of HeartGold is slightly easier than this. Lance is just awful because Salamence and Gyarados both have Intimidate, making physical attackers really struggle. The Garchomp has Swords Dance and Earthquake. Altaria has Perish Song. The Charizard really isn't that good. The Dragonite does have Draco Meteor though. The thing is, Ambipom is a nasty plot user, so I don't care about Intimidate. I can also attract the first Salamence so that it's less likely to attack, then set up with nasty plot and begin my sweep. Swift one-shots his lead, Dragonite is next, it's level 75 and Swift still gets the one hit. What about Garchomp? Well, Swift takes care of it because of a critical hit. Thunderbolt manages Charizard, Altaria's next, Swift takes care of it so there's no chance for Perish Song, and that leaves only Gyarados. Even Lance was easy for Ambipom. There have been some surprising difficult moments in this playthrough. I think if I had to summarize right now, it seems like the Kimono girls were the most difficult, that's just player error, but Blue is probably the most challenging battle that Ambipom has had to do up until now. Managing the Machamp with Trick Room definitely required a little bit of finesse. I could have figured out that Attract was the solution earlier, especially knowing that Nasty Plot essentially trivializes Lance. I'm going to keep that knowledge in the back of my mind for later when I'm using other Nasty Plot users in this game. Unlike with Sudowoodo, we are nowhere near the max level going into the fight against Red. Heading up Mount Silver, I'm only level 85. I grabbed the rare candy outside of Mount Silver, but I end up skipping the one near the summit just to try to save time. So Ambipom is going to be level 86 to go up against Pokemon Trainer Red. I know that I'm going to have to set up against Red, but there isn't really a great moment to do this. I think the best strategy is using Attract on the Pikachu. Hopefully it will not attack me, then I can set up some nasty plots and sweep the rest of his team. But Red's Pokemon are at significantly higher levels. Pikachu is level 88 and all of the starters are level 84. Luckily for me, Ambipom is both surviving Volt Tackle and Attract messes the Pikachu up, and I'm able to get set up to +6. Then Swift gets the one-shot and he sends in Blastoise next. Thunderbolt is of course super effective, I just have my fingers crossed that it's going to do enough damage, and it does. Venusaur follows, I go for Swift, this one-shots, Charizard gets taken out by Thunderbolt, leaving only Lapras and Snorlax. Of course, the water type faints to Thunderbolt, so now I just have to manage one Pokemon, but it has really good special defense. Snorlax is able to survive the hit from Swift, and then it uses Blizzard. This doesn't do enough damage to knock out Ambipom, but Hail is still on the field. I've countered it out with leftovers, but the weather effect takes place first in the battle before I heal. Because of this, Ambipom goes down. While I was trying the battle again with the same strategy, I had to think quick. What am I going to do? I need some solution for the Snorlax, and it could potentially be Attract, but in my second battle against Red, I realize a problem. The Venusaur can sometimes survive my hit from Swift, giving it a chance to attack, and if it does, Sludge Bomb is going to knock me out. So I need another way to play this final battle. Well, I can backtrack just a tiny bit, grab one more rare candy, and level up to 87. I'm hoping this will give me slightly more damage, even though it isn't over a damage rounding threshold, and then I'll be able to more likely knock out the Venusaur in a single hit. I don't want to commit myself to leveling up a bunch more to beat the Snorlax in one shot, because that would take like maybe 5 to 8 levels, and I just don't think it's worth it right now at this point in the playthrough. I definitely can luck through this using Attract. The only issue with that is that I have to get lucky against the Pikachu in order to set up with Nasty Plot, and this just isn't happening. I lose over and over and over and over and over again. Actually, a total of 6 losses before I'm finally able to get set up with Nasty Plot again. And I wasn't able to get the perfect luck scenario where the Pikachu doesn't attack once. Here's the thing though, if you look at the clock, Ambipom is doing very well. This is one of the best results I have got in Pokemon HeartGold, despite the fact that right now I have a ton of faults. But I'm still rolling the dice here. Once I knock out the Lapras, I have to use Attract on the Snorlax and hope that it doesn't attack me. I go for the status move, Snorlax fails to attack, and that gives me the chance to attack consecutively with Swift, and because of that, Snorlax goes down. Ambipom clocks in with a first playthrough time of 2 hours 37 minutes and 27 seconds. With 26 resets and 2 blackouts, that's a total of 28 faults. It finished the game at level 88 with a game time of 8 hours and 1 minute. Let's contextualize this result with all the other runs that I've done so far in Pokemon HeartGold. Ambipom right now earned itself a placement in the A tier, just behind Mewtwo. The Psychic type's time was 2 hours 31 minutes and 46 seconds. I think it is truly impressive that Ambipom was roughly 6 minutes behind Mewtwo, but it started as an Aipom, and it also had 28 faults. Mewtwo only had 13. When I first compared these results, I wanted to run Mewtwo again just to see how it would do, but I'm not going to do that today. These HeartGold runs take a lot of time. Plus, I like what I did last year in Pokemon Platinum, which is redoing some of the Pokemon that I did earlier in the year at the end of the year to see how much my skill has improved. I haven't had enough time with HeartGold yet to really know all of the little ins and outs that would give Mewtwo a significantly better time. So Ambipom is a really good solo running Pokemon. I would highly recommend this one to anyone who wants to play the game and just have a really fun time. In the end, Technician is a great ability, and of course Nasty Plot is probably the best move in Generation 4. Thank you so much for watching. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, it really does mean the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.